boats and boating clubs. So good discussion. Lior, it's great to have you on with us.
Hi, Jared and Rich. Nice to be here and excited for our conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. So Lior is the co-founder at Monte Carlo. This is becoming, again, I like to speak with secret giants, companies that are growing really fast and moving quickly. We saw you guys, we've seen you guys several times, and I'm really excited to speak with you all. So one of the things that I always like to ask, Lior, just because we have such a broad audience, is what the world without Monte Carlo looks like, so that people can feel the pain that customers are going through, and you're solving. So kind of, open the wound and put some salt in it for us. Let us know how bad it is, and tell us about it.
Well, I hope nobody will get hurt, but the way we always think about it is, pretty much every company these days is either already extensively using data to run its business, or trying to. And so basically, there's a lot of data teams out there, and they're building. And they take the data that the company has, or that it brings in from its external partners, and tries to get business value out of it, right? Whether it's analytic dashboards that people use internally to run the business and operate it and make decisions, whether it's machine learning models that essentially make decisions on behalf of the business based on data, right? Or whether it's, a lot of our digital customers use data to actually power their products. Like, they present data to their customers, to their partners, or they run business processes using data. And if you've ever built something like that, you've run into the issue where you wake up on Monday morning and you get an angry email or Slack message from someone using your data saying, like, oh, this looks off. This is broken. What's going on? Why are our numbers down today? It's just a fact of life, right? And so fundamentally, that's really the pain point we're after, right? We're trying to help the people that build data products, again, whether it's dashboards or models or whatever it is. We're trying to help them manage the reliability and the quality of their end products, of the things that they serve to their internal and external stakeholders, right? And this is a tricky problem, right? Like, data teams are becoming larger and larger, so there's a lot going on there. The systems that deliver those products are getting more and more complex. There's more data out there, right? And a lot of it comes from different sources, internal and external, that you don't control. You don't necessarily understand how they're going to change, and what they're going to do without letting you know. And so, I imagine we'll talk about the solutions later, but the idea is, like, you can bring some of the concepts and methodologies from DevOps, which is the practice of making software systems reliable, and apply them to the world of data platforms and data engineering and data pipelines, to help people make sure that that they provide a certain quality of service with data. And that's critical for a number of different reasons. For some of our customers, they actually run critical business processes from data, right? Or it impacts their customers. For others, it's about trust, right? Can they get the rest of the org to actually trust the data and use it, right? It's very it takes a long time to build trust, and it takes just once to lose it.
Exactly.
Right. So
the business side doesn't usually, in a case where they're not using Monte Carlo, they can't even see whether they can trust the data. They don't even know if they can trust it. It's just a black box to them.
Right. They're the end users of data, and and rightfully they sometimes doubt it. Right, like they see something weird and they're like, oh, is something happening in our business, or is the data broken again? Right, and there's a reason for that. Data breaks. Right, it just happens, and they're right to at least be suspicious.
Yeah, and I've been in meetings where there's no discussion about decisions needing to be made. It's discussions about whose data is correct or what data is correct.
Yeah.
The meeting is supposed to make a decision, and there's no decision made because it's all data arguments.
Right. Your data is wrong and mine is right, obviously. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about and we'll get into, I do want to get into kind of how you've solved that problem. But I want to understand the startup story so that we'll build up to starting to solve that problem. You tell us, like, how you got started. Were you in a garage somewhere, or, like step through all of those early years?
Yeah. Good question. I'm one of the co-founders of Monte Carlo, and I started with Bar, who, full disclosure, I'm also married to. So,
oh, cool.
We know each other for a long time.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I think the story starts. I think it was back in 2019. Bar was leaving her. She was at a company called Gainsight, which is sort of a data platform for customer success use cases.
Yeah.
And she left Gainsight, and she was thinking through, what's next for her. And she got excited by the idea of, maybe starting her own business. And I've worked in a bunch of startups before. I also built one before Monte Carlo, and and so I became the I had two roles at home: clean the dishes, advise companies. And so I was kind of involved in her process from the early days as a sounding board. And she was working through a bunch of different ideas in different spaces, and but there was one idea that kind of attracted both of our attention, just because we've both experienced it in our previous jobs. It's what ended up becoming Monte Carlo, and it's that problem of kind of building reliable data systems. From Bar's perspective, it was more on the analytics side. She was helping Gainsight's customers basically build their analytics for customer success use cases, and got burned so many times with reliability issues. She even built an internal, hack to try to address it. And for me, I was running the engineering team at a cybersecurity company called Barracuda, and
I've heard of Barracuda.
Cool. And we were building these like next generation systems that use machine learning to essentially to detect special kinds of fraud that are very hard to deal with. And I also disappointed my customers a number of times. And thinking back to it, it was more frequently because of data issues than the more traditional application and infrastructure issues that I know how to deal with as a software engineer. So so we both kind of lit a little light bulb. But there was still the possibility that Bar and I really suck at what we do. problem that we had.
That's
And
funny.
so Bar went out there and spoke to, I want to say over 100 data teams, kind of interviewed people, and it was just mind-blowing just how everybody not only deals with this problem and experiences it, but also it's so top of mind for everybody.
Right.
It's just like something that felt like for most people it was, one of their top priorities, one of the top things that would keep them up at night. And when you ask people like, okay, so what do you do about it, or why? And like,
Yeah.
very frequently you see the answer like, oh, it's just like such a hard problem. And it cannot, it certainly cannot be solved by a third party tool. Like our data is so different from everybody else's, and so forth and so on. And that process of kind of meeting a lot of data teams and seeing the pain and the intensity of the pain and the level of priority that this gets convinced us that there's just a massive opportunity, that there's that we could, if we were able to solve it. It wasn't clear at that time, but if we're able to solve this, like, we would have the opportunity to build a company the size that we wanted to build. And and that was part of our kind of, we had whatever cushy jobs. And so,
Yeah.
and so the precondition to starting a company would be that it could be a meaningful thing that could have a lot of impact.
Now, how did you call 100 people? I mean, was it just connections that you had over the period? Because I mean, obviously this, or maybe not obviously, multiple companies, right? So like you're talking one company and then another and then another. Is it just that's your network, or did you piggyback on someone to help you do that?
Wow, great question. And 100% of the credit goes to Bar.
Yeah.
She did most of it. And she hustled. Like, she called everybody she knew, and asked for introductions, and she actually cold called a lot of people on LinkedIn.
I love it.
And she did it. And in fact, the fact that all these teams like agreed to talk to her, to her at the time, was one of the signals that this is an important
problem.
Topic,
yeah, it's an issue.
Yeah, just people's willingness, and like you get reactions like, people assume that if you're talking to them about this, you already have a solution, right? And it's like there were a few people that were like, okay, can we start tomorrow? Like, so that was part of the validation, and the fact that we could get in front of 100 people to talk about this topic, and were such strong reactions was part of the.
So you finished these interviews. Now we go into, we're going to build something. Or did that kind of happen as a result of one of the clients saying, hey, can you start tomorrow?
Yes. At that point, and Bar was smart. She asked me to, help her take notes in some of the calls. So, and so I joined a few of those, and I saw that, I saw how people light up my own eyes. And so, I ended up, leaving my job and joining forces with her. And then we started building. And
so did you have the prospects already kind of planned out? Like, okay, we know that if we build it, they will come. We know this company is going to help us.
Yeah.
That's a pretty gutsy move to go to just say, okay, I'm out. I'm leaving my income.
Yeah. There were a bunch of people that were like, yeah, the moment you have something, come talk to us. obviously it takes time and a lot, and there's nothing guaranteed, but it was really helpful in terms of building that confidence to go out there and to build a solution and to convince other people to quit their jobs. We were lucky enough to have a few people join us, and to do that, it was really helpful to see that there's going to be a few people that are going to try it out at least.
I mean, people, I hats off, honestly, because people do not recognize the risk that startups take. Like, you're in San Francisco, so it's not cheap to just hang out with no money coming in, and you're really putting it all on the line. And so hats off to you guys for doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you did you have sort of this MVP in mind that you said, okay, if we can show this feature, we have some buyers? And what did that look like? Tell us what that looked like.
No, so that was actually great because, so here's the fun part. Like, obviously we had our own hypotheses about how to solve the problem just from our own experiences, right?
Sure.
Me and Barracuda and Bargate site, like we had an idea of like what it would take to solve this. But as I said, Bar even built a small version of it. And that's true, I think, for every startup. It always, when the rubber hits the road, like when you get out there and talk to customers, like you realize that you're right about some things and wrong about most things. And so those conversations were actually super helpful to us in understanding, what is that feature set that we need to build. You can start drawing the parallels, or like, oh, okay, like what stack are people using? Like what should we build in terms of like stack? You can start seeing like, okay, what are the most common issues that people are dealing with from a data reliability standpoint? Like what, we would actually ask the question like, okay, tell me about a recent data disaster. Like what happened? How'd you find out? How'd you fix it? Et cetera. And you start seeing the themes. You like start seeing that like all companies deal with the same issues. And that really informed and kind of refined our hypothesis about what to build, and helped us ship a product that, we put the first version of Monte Carlo in people's hands 2 months after we started.
Wow.
But
so what was the base thing you solved in that version?
Right?
It's like, what was the thing you solved in that MVP?
So I think that MVP did two things. It would, first of all, it would successfully connect with your BigQuery data warehouse, which is very important to get started. And it would essentially help you map the schema changes that are happening, right? Okay. And create visibility around that. I think, I think we already had our Slack integration, so it basically send you Slack notifications when schema changed.
Something changed. Okay, cool.
And it would also, and the other thing that was part of the very first version was it would kind of automatically track what we now call freshness, basically like what's the most recent update that happened to all of your data sets.
Okay.
And it would have this very simple heuristic where, it would analyze kind of the past patterns of how a data set was updated. And if, it would try to predict when you're going to get the next update. And if it, if it deviated from that by a large amount, we would send you an alert that one of your data sets is stale, right? Or essentially one of your pipelines is broken. So yeah, that was the first version of Monte Carlo, and it sucked and didn't work well. And we got a lot of feedback, and it was missing a lot of features.
Now, let me ask you a question about this. So when you went MVP, and you released it, was it were you collecting money right at that point, or was it okay? Try it and tell us if this, because that first dollar is a big deal for a startup. Tell us about the first dollar.
The first dollar. It happened several months later. So at first we actually, we should actually pay the people that work with us. The feedback that we've gotten and the opportunity.
Super valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. The opportunity to build with them was just incredibly valuable to us because, as I said, like with all of our experiences, like you don't really know and you don't really build a great product without involving real people that have.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So we didn't ask for money. We just wanted to figure out if we can make. In fact, I remember Bar had this like slide for the company for all 5 people of us, where she stated the goal was to make one customer happy. That is really all.
There you go.
Like just make one person happy, and so we didn't focus too much on money.
Yeah.
At some point, that happened a few months later. We didn't want to. I think we were pretty confident that this is a problem that would where we would be paid if we solved it.
Yeah, you could make it there.
Yeah, but we still wanted to kind of prove it out to ourselves. Obviously.
Sure, of course.
And so our first customer happened, I think, in January of 2021.
Okay.
So 2 months before COVID started.
Yep.
We got our first dollars.
That's awesome.
On us. Unfortunately, COVID.
Was it like a sigh of relief a little bit? Like, okay, we got our first deal in.
Yeah, no, it was a fun day. It is, it's a bar that you have to clear. Like, I've been through a lot of startups. Some of them made money, some of them didn't. So
yeah,
it's like it's one of those milestones that is not obvious at all.
Now, let me ask you a quick question on the GUI. Did you start with GUI first and then go back into your backend, or did you kind of have a backend idea that moved into a GUI?
Good question. So we built both from day one. We felt that
kind of just both as okay.
Yeah, it's a solution that does include an element of interaction, right?
Mm-hmm,
and so we had to do both from the get-go.
Yeah. Right. So you get your first dollar, you're kind of moving through. Give me some moments that you knew, just validating that you had something special. Like this wasn't just going to be a startup. It was going to be, it was going to go somewhere big. And tell us about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of happy moments along the way. Right?
Yeah, give me some of those.
But I will probably say like the first happy moment or the first moment I knew this is something that could be big.
Yeah.
Is actually even before we started the company during those interviews.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Seeing the reactions to it was mind blowing.
So were you pitching them on the idea of having it solved in terms of reactions? Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just gathering the problem, but like saying, okay, so if we could provide you this, what were you asking those kinds of questions?
A little bit, not a ton. People kind of assumed that we would.
Yeah.
We didn't even have to explicitly mention that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just get like a sense of like how painful the problem is, how people lose sleep over it, how people had huge losses in their business because of it. So yeah, that was definitely the first moment. I think another kind of key moment that helped. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to build a big business, but like we were fortunate that a wonderful group of people joined pretty early. People that are truly, best on the planet in what they do. And that was kind of, that was a happy moment, kind of, okay, it's not just me and Bar.
Right.
We can build a great team around this. And the first time, I remember one of our early customers had this quote that I still love today. It was something like, I have 3 tabs that I keep open at work. It's Gmail, BigQuery, and Monte Carlo.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And I was in pretty early days. Like it wasn't like, so I was like, score. There's something here. We can, there's a large market out there. We have people willing to spend the time to work in this problem. We've been able to add value, and make people happy. And that's just like a killer combination,
that's a bigger deal than most people realize, because, and I've said this for years, if you're familiar with the master data management industry, it's an industry that kind of collapsed under its own weight in a lot of ways. And the reason why is the projects were so expensive, just so ridiculously expensive. And the attention that executives would give to it was almost zero. I mean, so many companies just struggled to get executives to even care about this stuff, just to get them to care about it. It was it's like a big deal. And so having someone on the business side be able to say that is a pretty big deal, because it means that they're paying attention to the problem, which we've struggled with in the world of master data management, or at least in the world of data quality, or, this topic, for many years. So that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah. And we've learned it's, data reliability and data management too. I mean, it applies to both.
Yeah.
It's not just like a plug and play. Oh, I'm just going to connect it to my data warehouse and all my problems are going to be solved. It's in some ways also a business process change, right? The team needs to adopt it. The team needs to prioritize it. The team needs to act on it, right? Otherwise, you actually don't get the value that you wanted.
Right.
And so it's not sufficient that you have like a handful of people on the data team that are excited about it. You need to have the leadership team recognize like, oh, this is a priority. This is something we need to put resources in. This is something that people should dedicate their time to.
Right.
And we've seen how important that is, right? And we work with our customers very closely to help them actually adopt it as an organization, right? And my mind keeps going back to software engineering, which is where I come from. And it's not enough to buy a lot of tools to ship reliable software. You actually need a team. You need DevOps people, or at least people that care about DevOps and pay attention to it, to actually meet your SLAs, right? It's not just about turning on a tool. And so like buy-in from leadership, from the data leadership, and even the business leadership is critical on these things, right?
That's an interesting approach. So you sell the deal, but then do you keep it within a sales team to continuously kind of grow out the messaging and make sure that there's adoption, or is it more kind of in a support team that does that? How do you do that?
We have a customer success team
that
works very closely with our customers actually to help them adopt the practices and the solution with them, right? And it's about getting teams together to say like,
Right.
hey, this is what reliability means. These are the SLAs we want to hit, and what do we need? What sort of alerting do we need to do that? And what
Mm-hmm.
and when we get alerts, what are we gonna? Who's going to address it, and how?
Mm-hmm.
And so our team is uh, helps guide customers through that journey that they have to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because again, just connecting a tool to to your stack
Yep.
is not
Yep.
going to solve your reliability problems.
And this is one of the problems that MDM tools had, is that they would and again, I realize you guys don't do MDM per se, but in terms of uh, decision making processes with data, they would sort of have to rely on a systems integrator to kind of plan out all of that governance.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea of, we've sold the tool, and now we're going to help you kind of expand this umbrella of, who owns decisions for different key things that we find in the data. That's I'm sure it's uh, a useful thing to keep growing that base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Um,
people underestimate the value of that, I think.
oh yeah.
I'm a technology person, right? I
Yeah.
like to write code and build things, but it's for a company to adopt the technology, especially something like a data observability tool.
Hmm.
This part is so incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. So now tell us, let's get into the feature sets. Okay. Let's get into kind of like, what are some of the things that you're doing with observability? Talk through some use cases and things like that have really, if we were seeing a demo, there's moments I'm sure you've had people say, "Oh wow, yeah, that's going to be a big impact." Walk us through a few of those, just so that people can get a sense of kind of the capabilities that Carlo's got.
Yeah, great question. So, um, at the very high level, I'll start with the high level and then I'll break it
Mm-hmm.
down to features. But at a high level, there's kind of three high level use cases that we tackle. Um, the first thing with reliability is like you need to know when things break,
Yep.
right? If your customers, your end users find it, you're kind of already toast in
Mm-hmm.
in a
Mm-hmm.
way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And often, and the problem with data is it oftentimes gets caught weeks and weeks after the problem started, and it can sometimes be really tricky to fix because the data is already missing, or even if it's there, like you need to run complicated backfill processes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so like the first element of Monte Carlo is a tool is to help you get proactively alerted when things break instead of hoping that someone somewhere will notice it, right? So
How do you define a break? Like, is it something you configure in, or is it just looking for anomalies as it goes along?
right, great question. I think the um, so fun fact, there's like a billion ways things can
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying,
Well,
like, how
yeah.
is this?
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
you think about it. We've got bad data. We've got data that hasn't refreshed, right? We've got
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so we've
How
got
do you
there's so many different
Mhm.
scenarios where you've got these issues that are impacting the consumers of the data.
Right. Right.
right, yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where we've put together this framework, and our product actually implements it in a very direct way.
Hmm.
We've been calling it the data observability pillars in our blog and written materials. But basically, and I'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
But the idea is if you can track these metrics or these pillars consistently, then you can have a pretty good idea of how healthy your data is, right? In the sense that many, if not all, data issues manifest themselves as something that can be tracked through those pillars. So I'll explain what they are. First, we already mentioned it, data freshness. Actually, that's pretty straightforward. If your data is not in, then it's broken, right? It's stale, it's inconsistent with other data sets. You need to track that. The second is what we call volume. So like how much data you have, with the underlying question being, did I get only partial data, right? Did I not get all my records? Or did I get too much data? That's also like a problem, right? You might be, your assumptions may have changed, or maybe there's just duplicated the whole thing or whatever.
Right.
So volume is really critical. And then the next one is distribution, right? Like the characteristics of the data, right? Starting from the fundamentals, like am I getting nulls or values, and am I getting duplications or unique values? But then you can also go into more customized distribution metrics that are specific to your business. Maybe in your company, all first names must start with either a J or an R. You can actually measure that and make sure that your data is consistently like that. The fourth is schema, right? It's when you have new fields, or certainly fields that are missing, or type changes, these are things that can really break your assumptions and your logic. And the fifth is lineage, actually. And lineage doesn't directly measure data health per se.
Yeah.
But it leads me to kind of the second part of what Monte Carlo does. It's not just alerting, but it's also helping you resolve issues quickly.
Okay.
Right. Solving data breakages can be so time consuming and hard.
Right.
And painful that people sometimes just don't do it. Or it takes up, some people I meet, like 50% of the team's time is dedicated to trying to troubleshoot problems.
Yeah.
And part of the benefits of having an observability solution is that you can actually really accelerate it, right?
Right.
Because you collect so much metadata and metrics and logs and lineage, you're able to actually guide people through the resolution process and correlate a lot of different information that can help them really track down the problem, right? And lineage is critical. We kind of call it out because it both helps you. Obviously, it helps you understand what's upstream of the data set and what may have impacted the issue. But something that people underestimate is also the ability to understand what's downstream, right? What is the impact, right?
Right.
Because a lot of breakages are maybe it's in a data set that nobody uses, right? Nobody looks at,
Right.
Or maybe it's in the data set that's actually feeding into your most critical reports that go, to all@acme.com, right? And without lineage, it gets really tricky to figure out, right? So
that's a complex lineage is a complex problem to display, right? It's complex to get that. I'm curious how you did it, like, because I've heard of companies that just do lineage. Like there's a company out there called I think it's Meta Integrators or something, and that's all they do. They don't do anything but lineage, and they sell it to the bigger vendors. They sell it to SAP and to Informatica and all these different companies. It's a complex problem because you got to be able to go back into this crumb trail of where the data came from. How did you deal with that?
Yeah. So the there's kind of there's three critical elements here. One is definitely our ability to process logs from a lot of systems, right?
Okay.
In particular, the kind of most straightforward example you can think about is all the queries that are running in your data warehouse. Is something that Monte Carlo automatically ingests. And we essentially reverse engineer the SQL to understand all the dependencies within the data warehouse.
I see.
And we cross-check it with metadata to kind of understand all the different tables and fields that are there, and we could map field level dependencies based on all the SQL that you have running. Now, you want to maybe extend it to the BI layer, right?
Right.
And so we've also done a lot of work to collect a lot of metadata from BI systems, and we do a bunch of tricks to kind of stitch these things together.
I was going to say that's not easy. This is for people that don't know, this is a very difficult world. Like this is.
Yeah, and and this is interesting. I keep going back and thinking, Lior, about you talked about the 100 interviews that you did at the beginning, and how there was kind of that eye opener, like this is a problem that a lot of people are having. But I'm assuming that in that same process, you realize not only that this is a problem that everybody's having, but it's a very complex problem that most people really have no clue how to deal with it. And so it's kind of like, if you can solve this, it's an amazing.
It's Pandora's
thing
box. It is Pandora's box.
Everybody's got the problem and nobody really knows how to do it. So if you can simplify the complexity of how you solve that problem, it's really kind of, both the two of the pillars of, hey, we need a company that can build a process to do this, right? So
yeah, it's just like that. But lineage is a complicated problem. Just lineage without all the other things I mentioned.
Yeah.
And you'll see blog posts from some of the large tech companies. I think Slack had this one where, or maybe Airbnb as well, where like how they solved for lineage internally. But if you're even like a mid-sized organization, or if you're a large company but not one that that is a tech magnet that can hire thousands and thousands of talented engineers to solve every problem, then it's hard, right? Like you have your top team, like you want to put them on your core business, on the things that are driving your own business. You may not want to have them try to solve auxiliary things like lineage, for example, right? And so that was kind of part of the in general observability, not just lineage. And so that was part of our of what was exciting there, is that we could actually dedicate the time and the resources to and fully focus on this problem and give people the tools so that they can focus on their whatever it is that they're trying to do. And we have customers across all sectors of the economy that you could imagine. To our surprise, we didn't realize so many people are using data. But yeah, we can kind of take that off their plate and deal with all that complexity so that they can just use it.
So what are some features? Future features is fine too, but what are some of the features you're really excited about that you're seeing, like, wow, this is gonna be big?
Yeah, there's a few recently that were super exciting. One definitely something we released just recently, and we're actually continuing to build. It's a big project, which is support for the Databricks ecosystem.
Okay, yeah.
So for the first time, Databricks customers, and there's a lot of them, can actually have observability in their own data lake, Delta Lake. So that's been a big one, and there's a lot of excitement in the market around it.
That's an interesting one too, because a lot of Databricks clients, they'll source their data from very raw sources, like it could come from a highly unstructured source. So I'm wondering if that has, like, if there's any adaptation you ever had to make for that as well.
Yeah, their data problems are more complex. We try to, honestly, the under the hood implementation is very different, but essentially what we do is deliver those exact
same metrics, right
on, in a data lake environment, and certainly challenging from a technical perspective in a way,
sure,
sometimes more than in a data kind of more traditional data warehouse, but from the customer's perspective, they're getting those capabilities that we have on data warehouses in a data lake environment, and so that's been really cool. We've also released a lot of capabilities around this year around the resolution process, and like how to help people pinpoint and identify what is causing a data issue. And so you'll see things like correlating data breakages with code changes. We actually track all the logs, so we're able to tell you, like, hey, this code change here might be tied to the problem.
Ooh, that's really good. That's really good.
Or similarly, like we've developed a bunch of capabilities around the analyzing the data itself, so we can kind of basically automatically find which segments of the data, if you will, are correlated with an issue, right? We can tell you, like, hey, this problem is happening with the records that come from web, but your Android and iOS records are just fine, right? To help you kind of pinpoint the problem. That's been very exciting for our customers. And a lot more around that.
Yeah, it'd be cool if you could have it like connect to GitHub as well, so you could see, all right, now here's the code you checked in that just broke this.
Yeah, that's the next step.
Check it out, make a branch, let's move on.
Yeah, and the next step is just to issue a PR with the fixes there, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's great. But yeah, it's been exciting here for us.
Yeah, so how is it licensed? How do you guys license the software? And is it by the audience, or like how do you do that?
So it's a SaaS model. So basically, people usually get an annual subscription to cover their data. We actually work pretty closely with our customers to find the pricing model that works best for them. So some prefer to go by the different integrations that they need in their stack. Some go by the size or the data footprint. Some go by the number of users that they want to have use this. So we work with our customers around what makes most sense for their business. It usually ends up being essentially a fraction of what they're spending on data infrastructure, right? The Monte Carlo bill is not substantial when compared to your Databricks or Snowflake or
And then what's the best way to get Monte Carlo in? Do you guys do like trial licenses, or is it more of like we have a kind of a dog and pony show, talk through the thing, and then license it?
We somewhere in the middle. So we engage with all our customers, but we also do POCs in production with our customers, right? So we do like to talk to our customers, to make sure that we can help, right? We don't want them wasting their time.
Exactly.
If if we're not the right fit for their problems or for their
Mhm.
stack. And the second is like we said before, adopting a data reliability program goes beyond like
Mhm.
you know, putting your API key into the observability tool, and so
Yep.
we want to make sure our customers are successful in their business journey as well,
Mhm.
right? Like
Right.
setting up the product is fairly easy. It's actually
Yeah.
trivial, but making the business changes is something that requires more prescription and help. And so we like to be part of that process. Having said that, we never sell the product before people implement it in production, get value.
Yeah.
We have a very strict policy at Monte Carlo, shelfware nowhere. We never want to be the tool that you've bought and you don't use. And so
Yeah.
if we can't make you successful in a short POC, then we won't sell you.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great ethos. I think that'll help you guys go a long way. I mean, just even in your own customer reviews of the tooling, I'm sure they're very high, just simply with that ethos in place. I love the customer success model of, you're sort of engaging at the very get-go and making sure that it's successful as you kind of handhold them along. But then once they're there, you're still sort of growing that umbrella over the teams. And this is, I really appreciate this interview because it's number one, it teaches you the value of listening to the problems people are experiencing, really listening to those problems and being able to, internalize them in such a way that you could productize it, and very powerful. And I love the fact that you took the risk to actually, I'm quitting my job and we're going to just go whole hog into this. And that's a big deal. Are there any questions I didn't ask that I should have asked?
No, I think you asked some great questions. It was a fun interview, and I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, no, it definitely was helpful. Now, how do people get in touch with Monte Carlo? Is just go to the website, fill out some forms, or
yeah,
or stay in touch?
MonteCarloData.com is the way to find us. Or I'm always happy to connect with people. So if you find me on LinkedIn,
Okay.
please don't hesitate to connect and to reach out. Always happy to chat with other people in data.
Well, Lior, this has been an awesome opportunity to meet with Monte Carlo, and we're excited to see where you guys take it. It certainly looks like you're on a great trajectory, and hats off to you and Bar for all of the work that you've done.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah.
All right. We'll catch you all later. Thanks everybody for joining.